give out. No, I think he was arguing.
It's funny what Ken just now said to me. He said, "Are you Jewish?" It's funny, isn't it? Didn't even know.
It never mattered, did it?
No, it never mattered.
You're Jewish. It never used to matter. It's funny.
I actually had to become Jewish again because
Here we go.
Oh, it's true.
Hello, everybody. Can we please sit down now? We're going to make a start. Sorry for the slight delay. My name is Tina. I'm a member of the steering committee of Labour Against the Witch Hunt, who's put on this meeting at considerable cost, I should say. As you can tell from the nice surroundings here, it's quite difficult to find a venue these days, unfortunately. So we had to dig quite deep. So if you could help us out a little bit covering the costs later on, that would be much appreciated. A few things, housekeeping issues. Please put your phones on silent. And please do not film this event. We've got a camera here and we're going to live stream and you can watch it afterwards, etc. It's the bandwidth issues or something, I'm told. Later on, we're also going to film the Q&A. I'm not quite sure how long time we've got for it, but the Q&A, we're not going to film the questions. We're going to film the audio, if you know what I mean. So you can ask questions without feeling, you're on display, etc. Okay, just a few opening remarks. I think we could all agree we're in a very, very crucial stage at the moment in the battle over the soul of the Labour Party. I think we're. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I know everybody needs to see me, definitely. Oops. Can you hear me? Probably not. I need to use this one. Okay. This one here. Okay, I think we all knew that with the election of Jeremy Corbyn on that glorious day in September 2015, that was only the beginning. I don't think anybody expected we'd take the Labour Party, we'd take society straight away. I'm not quite sure we all thought it would be quite as bad as it's turned out. I think we all knew we had a left-wing leadership, we have a left-wing membership, and in between is a large bulk of, shall we say, people with a moderate political viewpoint. I think to them, Jeremy Corbyn as a friend of the oppressed, a friend of the oppressed people everywhere, especially the Palestinians, and a friend of the left, he's always been not acceptable, to simply put, to the right wing, not just in the Labour Party, but also the people who run society. From capitalist point of view, is a very unreliable ally to lead Britain. So I think therefore from day one, from his election, even before his election, but right from the beginning, there have been plots, there have been coups, we've all seen it, we've all been there. Hundreds, if not thousands, of members have been suspended, investigated, expelled. And in November 2016, I don't know if comrades know this figure, Christine Shawcroft was sent to the NEC, still also a victim of the witch hunt, I believe. She reported in November 2016 there had already been 11,000 complaints made against Labour Party members, mostly from the right against the left, obviously. 11,000, that was before what I believe is a campaign we're witnessing at the moment, a campaign to conflate anti-Zionism, opposition to Zionism with anti-Semitism. I think we're witnessing an attempt to redefine what anti-Semitism actually means. Take all scientific basis from it, which is hatred of Jews. I think that is what anti-Semitism is. And we're seeing it redefined as criticism of Israel. It's now being in the process of redefined that this means anti-Semitism. I think this is part of the coup, or the slow coup. I think this is the only part actually of that slow coup that has made a real dent in Jeremy Corbyn's image and has really harmed the Labour Party. Not because he's an anti-Semite and not because the Labour Party is institutionally anti-Semitic, but because he took that campaign seriously. Too seriously, I might think. The leadership tried various attempts, I think, to put a lid on it. The adoption of the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, etc., but the genie was out of the bottle. Every time the leadership took a step back, the right in and outside the Labour Party made 2 steps forward. I believe we're at the moment at a very crucial time, in fact, in the witch hunt and in the campaign to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn and against the left. And not only is Jackie Walker's 2.5-year suspension nearing its end, one way or another, and we should know more on Wednesday. But I think the suspension of Chris Williamson MP for merely questioning if the Labour Party really is institutionally anti-Semitic, being suspended for questioning that he didn't say anything anti-Semitic, nobody's claiming that. I think it's an absolute injustice. He's been, sadly, the only MP he's become a target because he's sadly the only MP who's campaigned not just for the democratization of the Labour Party, which is much needed, but he's also the only one who stood up for people like Jackie Walker, Ken Livingstone, and others who've been unjustly suspended, expelled, etc. The only one who dared to speak on platform. So I think I speak for everybody when I say we're really conveying our best wishes to Chris and our wishes of solidarity. 18 CLPs have so far come out in support of Chris Williamson, and this is despite the apparent ban on motions going around. If you haven't checked out our website, Labour Against the Witch Hunt, do, because it's fake news. There is no ban. You are allowed to move motions, you are allowed to discuss motions, and you're allowed to stand up in solidarity with Chris. So please do. Dozens of trade union and labour movement organisations have come out. Ken Loach is sending a message, which I will read out later. Alexa Sale, Mike Lee, Loki, all sorts of people have come and stood up. So it's a very important campaign, and I think one where all agree on it's incredibly important that Chris Williamson is reinstated. But this will lead to all sorts of problems. Believe me, either way the decision goes, there will be all sorts of problems, and I'm not going to go into detail on this. One of the first prominent victims of the anti-Corbyn campaign is here with us tonight, especially in the media. That was, of course, Ken Livingstone, former mayor of London and persistent campaigner.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here with so many old friends going back to the 1970s. I want to start by saying I've not just been accused of being anti-Semitic. I've been accused of being corrupt, alcoholic, violent, tax dodging. On the day I became the leader of the GLC back in 1981, Thatcher made a speech to the Scottish Conservatives saying that my plan was to impose on Britain a communist tyranny like those of Eastern Europe. Now, the idea cutting affairs was going to actually trigger a communist revolution was bonkers. But the next day, every Tory newspaper, for the first time, sent a reporter in full-time to County Hall. The Daily Mail brought its war correspondent back from the Middle East and told him he had to file 6 stories a day. I've never seen a reporter under so much bloody pressure. And up until that day, no one had ever heard of a GLC leader. GLC leaders had not had a press officer. You occasionally got a brief mention in the London evening papers. But it was transforming, and it just got worse. Papers like the Daily Mail implying I was supporting the IRA's bombing campaign, others implying I was actually a Soviet agent, Private Eye, claiming that I had a secret Swiss bank account into which Colonel Gaddafi had put $200,000. As I was living in short-lived housing at the time, that was difficult to believe. And then Tory Central Office was briefing the press that I'd been at a gay party in the East End of London where I'd been sodomised by 6 men. And you've got to bear in mind, back in 1981, that wasn't the vote winner it would be today. But it was that point which started the anti-Semitism stuff. A leading Tory on the GLC, who was expected to be the next Tory leader, was invited to meet the editor of the Daily Mail. When he gets to the office, the editor of the Daily Mail says, I want you to put this question to Ken Livingstone at the next leader's question session. And he implied I was anti-Semitic. Now that Tory had known me for 8 years, I'd been on the council. He said, it's not true, I'm not asking that. But that was the first anti-Semitic smear. But this is endemic all through the politics of the left. When Franklin Roosevelt became president, one of the first things he did was introduce benefits for the unemployed. the Republicans and the right-wing press in America are saying this is the first step to communism. And of course, I don't think anyone here is old enough to remember it, but the 1945 general election in this country, Churchill was going around the country saying if Labour wins, they will introduce a Gestapo. The idea Labour government's going to create a police state. But of course, the Tories didn't want to talk about the NHS or the welfare state or building council housing. It was about distracting and making it difficult for Labour to get that across. And so this is endemic. If you have a genuine socialist leader who is going to transform things for ordinary people and make the bloody corporations pay their fair share of tax, they will do whatever is necessary to stop you. And that means lies and smears in most of the West. In other parts of the world, it can mean assassination. Now, the simple fact is the elite will do everything to stop Jeremy getting into government, because they look at John McDonnell and they think that bugger's going to make us stop all our tax dodging in the Cayman Islands and things like that. And that's what this is all about, diverting attention away from Labour's real policy. And I found this interesting when Jeremy got the leadership and I was being asked to do interviews. And I was saying, well, Jeremy can win the next election. Now at that stage, 80% of Labour MPs thought we'd be wiped out at the next election. They didn't believe Jeremy and his policies would connect with people. And so that was the first time I started to hear accusations about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Early in 2016, when we were having the NEC election for the youth delegate, and the left-wing candidate, who was a member of the Oxford University Labour Club, was denounced as being anti-Semitic because people in the Oxford University Labour Club had talked about the need for sanctions against Israel because of its abuse of the Palestinians. That's not anti-Semitism, but that was the beginning, and it started to grow. What was interesting, by the April 2016, 80 Labour Party members who were Jewish published a letter in the Guardian saying that in all their hundreds of years in the Labour Party, they had never once heard or seen anything anti-Semitic. And it's 50 years and 2 months since I joined the Labour Party. And in all that half a century, I once heard someone say something racist. Back in 1970, one of our white members in the Western Ward Labour Party said, if blacks want to be a part of Britain, they shouldn't be singing songs like Young, Gifted and Black. Now that is the only racist thing I've ever heard in the Labour Party. So I was going around doing interviews saying, this isn't true. There isn't a problem here in the Labour Party with all of this. Anyhow, the BBC had asked me to do a radio interview. This is, I said, about 14th of April. And I was asked one question about Hitler. I thought, this is wholly irrelevant. I answered in just 16 seconds, briefly referred to the deal struck in July 1933 between the German Zionist movement and the Nazi government, in which they planned and did move 60,000 of Germany's 500,000 Jews to what was then the British colony of Palestine. In the 3 hours that followed, no journalists contacted me to ask about what I said. Not at all. But then I turned up to do at midday a TV interview down at Millbank. And there's the Labour MP, John Mann, with a camera crew in tow. And as I come up, he starts shouting in my face, you're a Nazi apologist. Oh, yes. He then goes on television and says I'd said Hitler was a Zionist. How can anyone say a man who loathed Jews all his life was a Zionist? But because it was all filmed on telly, it went global. And it wasn't just that. Soon on the internet you could see things saying I said Jews were like Nazis. That it's not anti-Semitic to hate the Jews of Israel. And you can't have a proper functioning democracy in a world in which the media, whether it's the press or the internet, can just spread lie after lie after lie. Because the one thing those reactionaries who own our media know is that unless you're not just a millionaire, but got several million, you can't sue. Yeah. You can't get government aid for a libel case, and literally, even before you get to court, you'll have spent well over £100,000. So broadly, they know they can say anything they like, and there's virtually nothing that we can do about it. What I then found amazing, because I just thought, John Mann's a bit mad, obviously. But then I get a phone call saying that I've been suspended from the Labour Party by the General Secretary, Ian McNicol. And literally, the debate apparently was going on horrendous because Jeremy's office didn't want this to happen. But Jeremy had no control over the disciplinary structure in the party, and it was all filled with ghastly old Blairites, of course. And I have to say, it's quite good. When Ed Miliband was Labour leader and I was on the NEC, and the question of who to appoint as the new General Secretary came up, he said to me, don't vote for McNicol. I never asked why, I just didn't. Now I know why. But for a General Secretary to suspend a member based on an allegation he said Hitler's a Zionist without picking up the phone to ask, is this true, is an outrage. It completely contradicts any sense of natural justice. But one of the things after my suspension that really moved me, in the couple of weeks, somewhere between 30 and 40 Jewish people came up to me on the street saying, we know what you said is true, what's all this about, what's going on? I remember one woman saying, I don't think these MPs read their history. And I was sad, if they read their history, we wouldn't have gone through the banking crisis in 2008. But literally, although that was the front page story on every paper the next day, except the Financial Times, not a single radio or television news channel invited me on to question about what I said. So I had no platform to actually come out and challenge all of this. The Labour Party's disciplinary unit then spent 11 months poring over everything I ever said or written, and all these claims weren't even raised. I sit through about a 2-hour hearing. No one says you said it was a Zionist, or it's Jews are like Nazis, or it's not anti-Semitic behaviour, all that gone. They opened the thing saying, we want to be absolutely clear, no one thinks you're anti-Semitic, but you caused a lot of problems to the party by defending the Labour MP Naz Shah. Well, to continue my suspension because I'm defending a Labour MP who's been readmitted to the party, which is anti-Semitic, they wouldn't have brought back in. I mean, it was outrageous because it was still, and this was Jeremy's big problem, a Labour machine controlled by all the ghastly old Blairites. Convinced Jeremy was going to lead us to a wipeout and doing everything possible to get rid of him. And that's what has fueled all this stuff about anti-Semitism. What I find amazing, given the amount of coverage about anti-Semitism in the media, why has no paper or radio or TV programme examined one basic fact? In the 8 years I was Mayor of London, anti-Semitic incidents recorded by the police went down 50%. Under Boris Johnson, they doubled. And why? As soon as I became Mayor, the Board of Deputies of British Jews asked to meet me. Their first point, they said, we'd like you to stop criticising Israel's treatment of the Palestinians. I said, we're not going to agree about that. But then we agreed to work together to put on Jewish events, open to non-Jews, to help create tolerance. We did the same thing with Muslims and Hindus. And it wasn't just anti-Semitic incidents went down, homophobic incidents and all forms of racism declined over those 8 years. Boris then gets elected, of course, all he does is promote himself, so it gets worse again. The simple fact is, it's coming to the end now, I remember we had a poll, not one done by the Mayor's office, a poll came out in the early 80s, showed about 9% of people in Britain had some degree of anti-Semitic views. The poll in France showed it was over 40%. Yes, there is still racism and anti-Semitism and homophobia here, but I think we've done better than almost any other Western democracy in challenging these things. And we're continuing to actually do that. The real reality is the right wing have always, and the media, have always demonised one group at a time. Anti-Semitism was predominant 100 years ago. The Daily Mail headline, Jews bring crime and disease to Britain. I mean, literally. The owner of the Daily Mail after the Second War says the Jews brought the Holocaust on themselves. But then, of course, they moved to the Windrush generation, and it was blacks. And I can remember people saying, don't touch a black person, they're dirty. But now it's Islamophobia. And we've seen, since the horrific attack in New Zealand, there's been something like a 593% increase in Islamophobic incidents here in this country in the last couple of weeks. So we've got to tackle it. The simple fact is, the Tory party has always pandered to racism and stirred it up till win. The first general election I remember in 1964, where our shadow foreign secretary lost his seat because the Tory candidate was doing leaflets saying, if you want a nigger for a neighbour, vote Labour. And what we're getting now out of the Tory party, but virtually no press, except The Guardian a bit today, has talked about the scale of Islamophobia inside the Tory party. And let's not forget, the last mayoral election, Linton Crosby, that ghastly Australian who does all the smear campaigns, he was doing a campaign suggesting that Sadiq Khan was linked to terrorism, you know, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty grim one in 2020 as well. So we need to stop these lies about racism and anti-Semitism, because Jeremy can carry on. He's had years of abuse, just like I've done, not give in to it. But the people it's hurting is the Jewish community in Britain. There was an opinion poll last year showed that 29% of British Jews believe if Labour wins the election, they will have to leave Britain. That is appalling. And the real damage being done by this is to cause that doubt and insecurity in the Jewish community. They don't deserve that. So I say to all those people who want to stop Jeremy becoming Prime Minister, have an honest debate about how you don't agree with his policy. Stop all these lies and smears. Thank you very much. Can I just say, I'd love to stay here all night and then go and get drunk with you afterwards, but I promised the kids I'd be able to cook them dinner by 8 o'clock and we're running a little late. Thank you very much. Good luck with all the rest of it.
Message of solidarity we've received earlier today from Chris Williamson. I want to thank grassroots members from the bottom of my heart for the extraordinary solidarity they've shown since my suspension. It's been incredibly heartwarming and humbling to be the recipient of such an outpouring of support and to witness the vicarious indignation felt by thousands as a result of this decision. But this isn't just about me, it's about all of us. I'm proud of Labour's record in standing up to racism and bigotry in all its forms throughout our history. Whether it was standing shoulder to shoulder with the Jewish community in Cable Street against Oswald Mosley's fascists, or confronting the fascist National Front via the Anti-Nazi League in the 1970s, Labour Party members have always been at the forefront. Let's remember it was people like Ken Livingstone, when he was the leader of the GLC, who were dismissed and disparaged as the loony lefties for challenging casual racism in the 1980s. That's one of the reasons why we owe Ken a debt of gratitude. He was in the vanguard of those challenging all forms of bigotry at that time. He played a huge role in shifting public opinion. And let's also remember that Jackie Walker has spent her life fighting racism as well as being a target of it. She helped to spearhead the efforts to stop Nigel Farage obtaining a... Jackie has helped to spearhead the efforts to stop Nigel Farage obtaining a parliamentary platform for his bigoted credo when he stood as a parliamentary candidate in South Thanet in 2015. Thank you, Jackie, for your tenacity and your bravery. Thank you. There is, of course, more to do, which is why we need to which is why we need to unite to stand up to bigotry that manifests itself in racism, Islamophobia, misogyny, and anti-Semitism. So let's stand together and keep our eyes on the prize of a Corbyn-led Labour government. A government that will transform our country. A government that will implement an irreversible shift in the balance of power in the interests of working people. And a government that will implement a genuine ethical foreign policy. That's why we're being subjected to unjustified and unjustifiable smears and attacks. And that's why my motto is that solidarity is crucial when it's difficult, not just when it's easy. We're not just trying to win an election, we're in the process of changing the course of history. So let's make this history together. Chris Williamson. Who's a member of the Labour Representation Committee and Jewish Voice for Labour, but he's speaking in a personal capacity.
Thank you, comrades. On the eve of what is going to be the trial of Jackie Walker, my task tonight is to try to contain my feelings of anger, and I don't think I'm going to succeed. But let me say how proud I am to share a platform with Jackie and with Ken. And listening to Ken, it makes me realise just how much we have been missing him. I'm sorry he's gone. I'm sorry he's left this meeting. But of course it means I can say what I like about him. I've known him for 47 years and I can say I've had literally hundreds of disagreements with him in that period. But he is one of the best anti-racist leaders our party and our movement has ever produced. The GLC under his leadership was groundbreaking, and his struggle for the rights of all minorities, Jewish, black, Irish, lesbians, gays, was years ahead of his time. He broke the mould of British politics and gave hope and inspiration to millions, and showed that a determined socialist administration could take on the Tories and win mass popular support. And I think that the allegations of anti-Semitism that he has had to endure are nothing short of obscene. I'm proud too to stand on this platform with Jackie, my partner and comrade. Proud of the way that you have stood up to the abuse, often racist abuse. Proud of your strength, courage, creativity and dignity. Proud of your refusal to apologise for a crime that you have not committed. And yes, at times, proud of your self-restraint, at least usually, against so much provocation. And there is someone else, of course, that I must express my solidarity with, and that is Chris Williamson. And with his suspension from the party, I think we have reached a pivotal moment, a tipping point. The witch hunt against the left has now claimed a leading parliamentary ally of Jeremy. And have no doubt we are in the middle of another attempted coup. And the false and exaggerated allegations of anti-Semitism will not stop unless and until Jeremy is himself toppled or, and this is the immediate aim, taken prisoner by the right of our party. This coup is about one thing: re-establishing the primacy of the parliamentary party against us, the membership. Chris has been suspended because he is one of the few Labour MPs, one of the few members of what is basically a supine parliamentary Labour Party, who is prepared to speak out against the smears. because he booked a room in Parliament to show the film The Witch Hunt, about the witch hunt in the party and the struggle of the Palestinians for justice, and for what he said at a meeting at Sheffield, defending our party against allegations of institutional racism. Now, his speech came after General Secretary Jenny Formby released data about how the Labour Party had dealt with anti-Semitism. Her data confirms that the grounds for attack on Jeremy and on us have been grossly exaggerated and in some cases fabricated. For example, Dame Margaret Hodge was informed by Jenny Formby that of the 200 dossiers she had submitted, only 20 were found to be by Labour Party members. Now, let me be crystal clear. Even one case of anti-Semitism is one too many. And we on the left will fight against anti-Semitism as we will fight against all forms of racism with every fibre of our being. But the data shows that the allegations that we are awash with anti-Semitism are simply untrue. Now, who's made these allegations? The charge was led against Chris by Tom Watson, self-appointed overseer of complaints of anti-Semitism in the party. Tom Watson, who only yesterday on the online Independent was portrayed as the alternative leader of the Labour Party. Tom Watson, who has set up a new Labour group in the PLP. Tom Watson, who is extremely unconcerned when it comes to racism against black people and Muslims. He went along with all New Labour's anti-terrorism and prevent measures. He abstained on Theresa May's 2014 Immigration Act, which introduced the hostile environment policy and which led to the deportation of hundreds of black people. So much for his anti-racist credentials. And what double standards? Siobhan McDonough recently came out with familiar tropes about Jewish people and she faces no sanction. And then Dame Margaret Hodge, I mustn't go there, with her, but I will, with her appalling attacks on Jeremy as being a fucking anti-Semite and her outrageous comparison of her treatment by the Labour Party with how the Nazis treated Jewish people. It is a disgrace and I find that deeply offensive. Now, I've been a party member for 50 years, a founder member of Labour Briefing, let's do me ad, a founder member of the Labour Representation Committee, founder of Labour Against the War. All these were my ways of surviving the Blairite years. But today I speak in a different capacity as someone who is Jewish and a proud founder member and now officer of Jewish Voice for Labour. And let me just say this. Just think where we would be today if it wasn't for that sane voice of Jewish Voice for Labour, which is prepared to speak truth to power. Now, comrades, I know what anti-Semitism is. I don't accept lectures on anti-Semitism from those who haven't experienced it or fought it. I'm not going to exaggerate my experience. I didn't suffer discrimination or exclusion in the way that black and Asian people still do. But I did suffer prejudice. And my experience of that prejudice, especially when I was young, made me feel an outsider, a feeling I've never lost. And I learned lessons from my father about fighting the fascists in Cable Street in East London in the 1930s, how the Jewish East End, in alliance with the Dockers and other sections of the Labour movement, stopped Mosley's fascist thugs. And these experiences and learning about the traditions of Jewish socialism led me into anti-racist struggles, made me a socialist internationalist, and at the age of 18 I joined the Labour Party. Beautiful. So what is the problem, comrades? There was no problem. until that lifelong anti-racist Jeremy Corbyn became leader. Remember who was leader before him? Ed Miliband, who was Jewish. And the main challenger to Ed was his brother David, also Jewish. As my JVL comrade Stephen Marks has pointed out, clearly all these anti-Semites in the party were doing rather a poor job. Now, Jeremy was a threat to the right wing of the party because he was a socialist and because of his pro-Palestinian record, a threat to supporters of the State of Israel. He becomes leader, and suddenly the party has a problem with anti-Semitism. Now, the Labour Party is part of society, the best part of society in my opinion, but it's part of society. Of course there are examples of anti-Semitism in the party, but from my experience it is underrepresented in the party, just as you would expect and just as the data reveals. And what we are seeing is a pincer movement, with sections of the right wing joining up with pro-Israel supporters. And a lot of this done, by the way, with the full support of the Jewish Labour movement, an affiliated organisation of the party that is Zionist in its constitution and supports Israel. And it's now threatening to leave the Labour Party. I will make no comment on that. Now, why does this witch hunt matter? Because it is used to undermine the best leader this party has ever had. Because it is a diversion from the fight against the Tories and their austerity programme. Because it is used to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism and silence criticism of the State of Israel and advocacy for Palestinian rights, and close down discussion on key historical issues. And because it separates anti-Semitism from all other forms of racism and obscures the racism against blacks and Asians, which structurally excludes them from power in society and within our party. It is a slur on our party, which has a proud record of fighting racism, and it, as Ken pointed out, it hinders the fight against anti-Semitism itself. It is odious the way fake allegations of anti-Semitism are being used for factional interest, and if we do not put an end to this, it will come back to haunt us. Now, they have tried to silence us. They have failed. And the level of support for the resolution on Palestinian rights at conference is testimony to that. Now, I just want to finally just get to a few points about where we are now. When Jeremy won the leadership, the odds were always massively against us. We were fighting the state with threats from the generals to overturn a democratically elected Labour government. The media with relentless attacks and ridicule. The Tories, the undemocratic structures and rules of the party with the right-wing dominated compliance unit, another party within a party being used to suspend hundreds if not thousands of Corbyn supporters. And then, of course, the key body, the PLP, shamefully refusing to accept the party's overwhelming verdict, briefing against Jeremy, forcing a second leadership contest, another party within a party, and fearing a Corbyn government more than any Tory government. And this is the problem, comrades. Unlike, say, Bernie Sanders in the United States, Jeremy has had to operate day to day in a parliamentary framework, putting together a parliamentary opposition within a hostile PLP. He and John McDonnell were embattled on the front line from the start. And the only possible way to fight against these powerful opposition forces was to build an anti-establishment insurgency from below. Our task was to rebuild the movement, utilising our leadership of the party to do so. It needed a democratic grassroots movement that would have to try openly and transparently to transform the party. That insurgency had to be a radical crusade against the establishment and an authentic voice for the dispossessed. And this is the nub of the problem we now face. That tension between the PLP and the membership I'm afraid to say exacerbated by the political degeneration and incorporation of the leaders of momentum, this has now reached a critical moment. I feel for Jeremy, especially after the split by the Gang of Nine. He has almost impossible choices, fearing another parliamentary split that could make a general election victory, even against this weak, split, crisis-ridden Tory government, desperately difficult. And yet to abandon the radical grassroots movement to the power of the Parliamentary Labour Party is to give up in advance on the chance of a lifetime of achieving a radical government. Now, our task is this. We need to build from below a movement to sustain a Corbyn government, where possible, go beyond its excellent but limited manifesto, or else lacking programme and base, we will go the way of Syriza, tossed aside by the power of capital, whatever our good intentions. So our task is to be both supportive and independent of our leaders, free from their pressures, speaking truth to power. And to do so, we need to reclaim that same radical spirit and unity that won us the leadership of the party that long 3.5 years ago. We need to embody the spirit of those who have fought against oppression. In Jackie Walker's words, black and white, Jew and Gentile, united in the struggle for a better world. Thank you.
Message of solidarity from Ken Loach. He would have loved to be here tonight, he said, but he's got some filming or something. I don't know. He's got something to do with film. I don't know. He's in Pinewood. He writes, the left has always stood in solidarity against racism and alongside its victims. That will never change. But allegations have to be proved, and the accused are entitled to due process at disciplinary hearings. This means open tribunals where the evidence is interrogated and judgments are available to all. Justice must be seen to be done. Equality before the rulebook. No special treatment for anyone, however venerable. And accusations that are considered to be vexatious should attract appropriate sanctions. A respected member of the Jewish Socialist Group said way back in 2017, accusations of anti-Semitism are being weaponized to attack the Jeremy Corbyn-led Labour Party. That is the observation of a Jewish member of the Labour Party. The statistics that Jenny Formby has released are revealing. For example, of 1,100 complaints received between April 2018 and January 2019, 433 related to people who were not Labour Party members, nearly 40%. 200 complaints were submitted by one single MP. They concerned 111 people. Of those, 91 were not Labour Party members. 200 complaints, but only 20 Labour Party members. And that is before evidence has been tested over defences made. The MP, of course we heard it, is none other than Margaret Hodge. As a matter of urgency, these figures should be re-examined and double-checked. If it can be proved that 91 of those accused out of the 111 are not even Labour Party members, why did Margaret Hodge submit these complaints? Was she careless and did not carry out due diligence? Or did she know they were not Labour Party members? So what are her reasons? She too is entitled to a fair hearing, but we must demand answers, given that mass allegations clearly bring the party into serious disrepute. He's put some asterisks here, but I think I'm going to read the full quote. Calling the leader of the party a fucking racist and anti-Semite also brings the party into disrepute. Why was Margaret Hodge not charged on that occasion? Equality before the law. Chris Williamson has fought as hard as anyone to advance the party under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. There's no way he's anti-Semitic. Read the speech in question, and it's obvious that he's talking about how we should respond to the present situation. Clearly, there's no implication of anti-Semitism in what he said. Jackie Walker speaks with great honesty about her own background, demonstrate the history of racism. Again, there's no way Jackie is anti-Semitic, and there are others who have been unfairly targeted. Recent terrible events show how the far right is on the march. They are the real racists. Yeah. As ever, it is people like Chris and Jackie and others in their situation who will lead our fight back. Ken Loach in solidarity. The next speaker is, of course, Jackie Walker, whose hearing is starting tomorrow. If you don't know the venue yet, we'll tell you now. It's a secret, but don't pass it on to anybody. We'll tell you later. Very honoured to have our comrade here speaking. Thank you.
Excuse me, because I'm not feeling very vociferous tonight. I'm feeling quite emotional, and I'm not going to hide it. And if I cry, I'm not going to worry about it, because it's that emotional to me, what has happened. And my speech tonight is not going to be about the politics. It's going to be about the personal journey that not just I, but a number of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people have been put through and endured because they had a crime that they had committed, which was that they wanted to change this country for the better. They wanted to see democracy. They wanted to have a Labour Party that reflected their views. You also have to excuse me because actually, and you know, maybe it's psychosomatic, but I don't know, but I'm also losing my voice at the same time. Maybe if I just keep on, by tomorrow it'll be silent. And I can just do a silent protest. I want to just pick up a few points from what Ken said. So much of what he said of what happened to him echoes my story. And I just want to pick out one of the things from that which is absolutely extraordinary. The tens and 20s and hundreds of articles that the British newspapers have written about me, all of them, and I guarantee you all of them inaccurate, some of them now being used against me, by the way, by the Labour Party. Not once, never has one British journalist got on a phone and asked to verify their story. Now, you need to understand how unusual that is. Not one British newspaper has done that. The BBC has never done that. The ITV, Channel 4, have never phoned to verify the story. And my expectation is that in the next 2 days and on, I will be pilloried. You will turn your radios on. You will hear Jackie Walker is anti-Semite. You will hear that she is a Holocaust denier, that she's unfit, that she's whatever. Not once will those people come to me or to mine, to the people I work with, for any verification for their stories. And certainly the kind of blanking of historical evidence. Well, I'll go on to tell you something like that, but I'm going to start from a beginning, and I'm sorry I've probably taken in half of the time that I'm supposed to, but I've actually said to Tina, I'm going to talk until I'm finished. because this is the last time I will probably talk to you as a Labour comrade. No, let's actually take it seriously. This is what is happening to us. This is probably, it doesn't mean it's the last time I speak to you as a comrade. I will always be your comrade. And I await the time when the Labour Party is fit to have anti-racists like me who reflect people from my background in it and actually treasure the message we have to give to the Labour movement and not persecute us. Because actually the Labour Party, let's remember, has not consistently had a fine record on race. We already heard that. We heard it from Graham. And actually when I came to this country in 1959, part of that Windrush generation, we were excluded from council housing by a Labour council because we were black. There was a colour bar by a Labour council. And sometimes I have to tell you, in the last 2 years, I have questioned how far our Labour movement have actually gone. Somebody sent a message to me the other day and they told me that I was irrelevant. No, I actually have to agree with them. I am actually irrelevant. I am actually irrelevant. I have no power. I have no money. I don't have connections in the media. Now that we see the demise of Chris Williamson as a spokesperson, I have nobody to speak for me in Parliament. And in that way, I am the same as most Labour members out there. And I'm proud to be that irrelevant, because those are the people I identify with, not the people in Parliament, not the people in government, not the people in the structures of the Labour Party. I relate to my comrades in this movement. When all this began, I had already returned to the Labour Party for 10 years. You know, I wasn't one of those who returned when John and Jeremy became leaders. I'd been there for about 10 years. And I remember sitting in a meeting, and some people here were at that meeting with John McDonnell. And we were sitting in Portcullis House, which is Westminster. And I remember him saying to us, when we get in, they will hit us with everything. They will hit us with everything. But I think the problem was most of us didn't know. We never thought about what everything would be, because we had this strange idea that we were in what they call a broad church. We thought that we had a deal with the other side, that what would happen is that now we had got the leadership by democratic means, now that we had supported them and knocked on doors and printed out leaflets and supported them loyally, that they would do the same to us. And we were wrong. Yeah. And that, I think, is a crossroads that we need to think about. So this is something very serious. Now, in that time, I'm not going to go over, we all know about the purges that happened, but maybe you don't know, but I do, because those people contacted me about the amount of people who wanted to commit suicide, about the amount of people who lost jobs, about the amount of people who had their children called names, who are excluded from their Labour Party and their communities. I know the people who were brought to nervous breakdowns and physical ill health at times when either they or someone close to them were battling serious illness. This is what it has meant, not just the politics of it, the people of it. Yes. The people of it. And I am livid, and I am disgusted, and I am ashamed of a Labour Party that has treated its supporters in this way. My life has been changed by this. My life has been transformed by this. Every venue I go to runs a risk of a bomb threat. Every venue I go to, I have to have security. I can no longer walk in the streets with that wonderful security of anonymity. I no longer stand toward the edge of a platform in case some nutter pushes me off. I am scared when people approach me. The Labour Party breached my data to the Jewish Chronicle and allowed racists and fascists to attack me. How dare they now? How dare they now put me up for tribunal? That's the bad bit. And listen, it has been bad. This has included my children, it's included my grandchildren, it's included Graham's family. This is serious business that we're talking about here, the destruction of lives that is going on, while they don't like to be called it, but while their little political elite, their little white political elite are playing games in Parliament. But out of this, I've written, with the help of a comrade, a great play which has gone around the country from nothing, from absolutely nothing. And I started a campaign when there was no organisational support, when nobody knew what was happening, when nobody understood even the terms of the story I was telling them. And that story has gone all around this country. It's gone to Northern Ireland, it's gone to Scotland, it's gone to Wales, it's gone to Germany, and it's gone to America. And now we even have the attention of some significant and major theatre players who feel this is an important statement. I have been part of the making of a documentary made on no money, which has been received to acclaim by our most eminent Jewish directors. Peter Kosminski, Mike Lee have said, this is a great piece of work, you need to see it. And you know how the Labour Party responded to that? They suspended the MP who attempted to book a room for a film where only one participant is not Jewish, for a group, it wasn't booked for me, for a group that is a Jewish group, on the grounds that it was racist and anti-Semitic. Now, luckily, this film is now available freely online. Thank you. This film is now available online. You can go and see it, witchhunt.org. And this film has already been seen by over 50,000 people. And I suspect some of those MPs, they've got into the toilets in Westminster, they're on their little iPads, and they've been watching that movie. And there's all sorts of people who've been scared to come and see it from CLPs, and they have watched the movie. You see, unfortunately, in these times, you can gag and control the press that people hear and read, but you can't quite control the social media, and that is our power. Yes. Nothing that Chris Williamson did was wrong. And I want to read you out, and I know we've mentioned her name before, but I'm going to read you out what Siobhan McDonough actually said. I'm going to quote it because it's important. She said, "It's very much part of their politics to be against capitalists and to see Jewish people as the financiers of capital. Ergo, you are anti-Jewish people." She was then asked, does that mean to be anti-capitalist, you have to be anti-Semitic? And she kind of said, well, yes, kind of. Now, I just want you to reflect on what the first charge that I had against me had, or the charge against Chris Williamson, and wonder why that isn't a case. I wouldn't say for suspension. I think she needs awareness raising. No, I really do. I think do I think she's a racist? No. She may be a disgrace, yes, but I don't think she's a racist. I think she's got muddled thinking. And what I'm saying here is that while we are running a set of politics where every time anybody makes a mistake, we point a finger and we go, racist! What are we doing? Because as socialists, we believe in change. We believe we can change people. And the way we change people is giving them knowledge. If all we do is exclude people, then we might as well just give up and go home, which is what they want. But we're socialists, and we believe, I believe, because I was an anti-racist trainer, that what you can actually do is that you can take somebody who is spouting racist nonsense in the way that she is, and you can change them through raising their awareness. And we have to remember that. That's the important work that Labour Against the Witch Hunt and Jewish Voice for Labour are engaged with as well. I'm just going to speak. I know I've been going on rather a long time, but I am going to finish. This is very important for me to say. Bottom line is, if I'd had a job or wanted a job, I'd be silenced at the moment, perhaps. If I had young children living in certain communities, I'd be silenced at the moment. I'm in a very privileged position. Might not last for long, but I have my own home. And I live on a pension. And it means I can be a free voice to speak. Now, what the Labour Party has done has devastated my life. And tomorrow, they are going to continue that devastation by having constructed special terms for judging me. They are not going to be using the IHRA, this thing that they fought for, they're not going to be using it. Why are they not going to be using it? They're not going to use any academic definition. Why? They're not going to use any definition that comes out of any book. Why? And I'll tell you why. Because they wouldn't be able to condemn me. They have constructed something, a definition, which is going to be about whether, in their opinion, people might be offended if they heard what I said. And the interesting thing about this is when I heard that, and I said, well, what people are they talking about? Are they talking about black people? When they're talking about people being offended, are they talking about black people? Are they talking about socialist people? Are they talking about Palestinian people? Are they talking about other oppressed groups? Who are the people that they are talking about where they're going to judge who is offended? I've got very little more to say about the process that I'm going to go through tomorrow, except with 3 working days left, I was presented with sheets of further evidence against me which wouldn't give me in any way time to respond to. And I was told categorically that that was natural justice for Jackie Walker. The evidence from the Labour Party included racist abuse against me, anti-black racist abuse against me. My solicitors asked twice that that should be removed from the evidence bundle, because not only had it offended and upset me when I opened the bundle, but I was going to be expected. Can you imagine it? I want you to imagine in front of a barrister and a solicitor and 3 hearing judges, I was going to have to open these pages and see this racist garbage as I was trying to defend myself. And we asked them to remove it, and they have refused to remove it. Now, I am just going to remind us of something John McDonnell said to me at that meeting, which is, he said, when the leadership can't speak anymore, you have to be the leadership. I will extend it and say, when the party can't speak for me anymore, I have to speak for it and deny that racism, which is now at the very heart of the hearing against me, at the very heart of the response towards me. And I'm just going to leave us with one thought. And those of you who've heard it, you'll have heard it before, so you can either laugh again or not. You know, it's up to you. Some people sometimes say to me, you know, oh my God, I didn't think it would be like this. This is horrible. They're lying about us. We don't get access to the media. It's awful. They're oppressing us. They're excluding us. And you know what I say? I say, welcome to being oppressed people. I say, welcome to being black people. This is how being oppressed feels like. And what I want you all to do is to take that experience and that knowledge and let it feed your political activism. Whether I am with you in solidarity in the Labour Party or outside in solidarity with you outside the Labour Party. Solidarity.
Thank you, comrades. Now it's time for you. We have some time for comments and questions. Just a second. My wish, but of course you're going to talk about what you're going to talk about, but if we could discuss where do we go from here, I think is an absolutely crucial question. Graham mentioned momentum having collapsed politically totally. It's not an alternative for the Labour left anymore. We need to build something different. I think it's becoming very, very clear. This is happening locally already, where there are some momentum branches, voting through motions in support of Chris Williamson against the wishes, clearly, of the momentum owner, John Landsman. This is a very good sign, but I think we also should talk about where we go from here in terms of our own organisation that critically supports Corbyn, fights for socialism and stands up to the witch hunt. Seems an easy thing to do, but I think maybe this meeting can be a step in that direction. Okay, we're doing this way around, I think, yeah? No? Okay. Okay, I'm going to talk of her. Okay, you can be first. My lovely assistant James is going to hand the microphone.
Mr. James.
Thank you, everybody. Very quickly, Brian Precious, Walthamstow East Branch, Labour Party. Yes, indeed, I'm legally prompted to say what I'm going to say now by Jackie, your comments about how the Labour Party leaked your data, personal data, to the Jewish Chronicle. Just very recently, we had a meeting at Walthamstow East Branch Labour Party, and what happened at that meeting? Well, you can read all about it in the Jewish Chronicle, because somebody taking very close attention to that meeting made a very accurate report of that meeting, not to an internal Labour Party body, but they leaked it all to the Jewish Chronicle, including the entire text of a resolution supporting the Jewish Labour that branch passed. And so I am drafting an email complaint to complaints@labour.org.uk. And I'm going to get my branch comrades, many of whom were there, some of whom are here today, many of them Jewish, who agree with me. I'm going to take that forward to complaints@labour.org.uk. And so that's one. Number two, that's another reason why I emailed Momentum not so long ago, in fact just a few days ago, notifying them my resignation from Momentum and saying that the treatment of Pete Wilsman warrants nothing less. Ditto Jackie Walker and ditto Chris Williamson. Solidarity, everybody.
Comrades indicate because if they want to speak while I'm looking out. So okay. Next is Roland, please. Keep your hands up.
Hello, my name's Roman Grants. I'm in fact also a member of Walthamstow East Labour Party, and I was one of the people attacked in that Jewish Chronicle article. I'm a member of Jewish Labour Movement, and one of the things... Sorry, Jewish I'm not qualified to be a member of Jewish Labour Movement because I don't support Israel. I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Labour. Thank you. Sorry about that. Graham mentioned the twin motives behind the attacks, the anti-Semitism attacks. People who are irreconciled to Jeremy Corbyn becoming leader of the Labour Party, and people who are trying desperately to defend the indefensible in Israel. One of the ways in which we have to fight this by fighting the witch hunt, but they're trying to scare us from speaking about Palestine. And one of the ways that we have to fight this is by continuing to speak on Palestine. Now, as we're sitting here today, Gaza is burning again. Gaza is being subjected to bombardment. And this, part of the reason for this, is it is a desperate ploy by Netanyahu in his election campaign. Every time there is an election campaign, Gaza is bombed. In this election, Netanyahu is clinging onto power. He's being challenged on the right by a party which wants to ban sexual relations between Jews and Arabs, by a party which wants to expel all Arabs from Palestine, by the Minister of Justice, who filmed herself in an advert spraying herself with perfume from a bottle marked fascism. He's being challenged. His main competitor, main rival on the so-called left, is a former chief of staff who boasts of having bombed Gaza back to the Stone Age. This is the reality that Palestinians are facing, and we have to continue to support Palestinian rights while they are trying to prevent it. And we have to say, because this is what they want us not to say, we have to repeatedly say that Israel is an apartheid state and Zionism is a racist ideology and movement. They want us to we will not stop it.
A woman who would like to speak. Okay. Gail, you're not a woman. No, no, you are, but not him. Could you bring the microphone to me?
Thank you. I am Elsa Collins. I am a teacher. At the moment I am with my daughter in Manchester, but I come to see my doctor, and now I came because this was urgent to be with Jackie and also with Chris Williamson. It breaks my heart what they are going through, and all the people in the Labour Party who represent the voice of the people, for the people who are oppressed and suffering, not only in the United Kingdom but in other parts of the world. I am not in the campaigns a lot, but I go to the internet, I write a lot. But also I would like to ask you, somehow we need to stop this. The people who do the accusations, to hold them accountable for defamation. But we don't need to pay. Why we have to pay to get the truth? Why these people have to get away with such lies, with such defamation? This cannot go on. We live in a democracy. We need to get rid of this witch hunting. Labour Party represent the people of United Kingdom, the people who are oppressed and want a better world. Thank you very much. And
hello, my name is Pat Byrne. I'm a Labour Party member over in Turkey. I'm a member of the Labour International, which is our organisation for all our party members abroad. And I can tell you that we've had a lot of discussion on this question. And Jackie and Chris Williamson have our full support. So I'd like to at least say that. The second thing is that I think that if this hearing goes against you this week, I think there's a very strong case, and I've said this to Chris Williamson as well, there's a very strong case that we need to take legal action on this. And I guarantee you that a crowdfunding appeal would get a massive response. And it's a way for all new party members, because this is not just an attack on the left, this is an attack on all of the party. They've said we're racist, they said we're anti-Semitic, and I'm not standing for it. And this is a way for all of our members to say we're not standing for it. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we're just in the process of forming a new group in the party called Labour for Media Democracy. Very good policies have now been developed in the Media Reform Coalition, which are for democratising thoroughly the BBC and transforming the media environment. And we've got to get those into the manifesto, and we've got to get them put in power, because if we think this is a problem now with the media, can you imagine if we win the election, what will face a future Labour government?
I've just seen Sarah. Put Sarah on first, please.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I'm really glad for this meeting, glad to support Jackie. Jackie, we need you to win. We need Chris Williamson to win. We need Asa Winstanley to win. In the same way, we fought for Moshe McIver, and we won that one, and we can win again. And you're very right. You know, Labour has a dubious history on racism. But it can be anti-racist, and that's why we're in the party. And it can be because of Jeremy and John, and that's why so many of us joined in 2015. And that's what we're fighting for. Our CLP is one of the ones. I'm from Hampstead and Kilburn, and we've been told not to pass a motion to support Chris Williamson. And after tonight, I think we have to go back and fight that out, because we can't be silent on this. Just to say that that people of color have been targeted, Jewish anti-Zionists have been targeted, Muslim members of the party have been targeted, and it's been a racist attack, and we can't accept that. Last of all, I agree with the brother. We have to renew our efforts for Palestine, and that's another thing we've been told. We bring too many motions supporting Palestine, but we're not going to accept that either. We have to keep up the fight, because, Jackie, if you leave, we know other members will leave. And if Chris Williamson leaves, many members will leave. We have to call out the leadership of Momentum, because they're not representing the grassroots. We have to keep up the fight, and we have to be out and with you tomorrow. And I hope when you go tomorrow, you will cuss them out, left, right, and center, and tell it like it is.
I think definitely Jackie will not go voluntarily, and that's definitely should. Just can I just call? That's right. Can I carry on speaking? Okay, can I carry on speaking? Thank you, Sarah. Okay, just in terms of what Sarah said, it's very important. There is no ban on motions. I know they're trying it out everywhere. The right-wing chairs and secretaries are trying to say there's a ban on motions that came straight from Jenny Formby. It did not. There is advice going around, which you read it properly. It says that the NEC will not discuss those motions because they concern disciplinary matters. How many motions do they read, actually, to be honest? So they don't read it, fine. We put it up online. We've got loads of motion and supportive statements online. I think everybody should be encouraged to do that. The comrade had his hand up for some time. No, yes, him and then Elaine.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm Brent Central CLP. We passed that resolution on Chris Williamson. I want to just tell you a little bit about that, because I'm the Secretary of the Unite branch, meets next door at Unite HQ. We're trying to move this resolution in support of Chris Williamson. and there happened to be a Unite official present at our branch meeting. He was talking to us, a bloke called Danny Freeman, who is allegedly the political organiser for London Region Unite. He told us that we shouldn't pass this resolution. The Unite Executive Committee had asked branches not to pass this resolution, and we should be acting in solidarity with Jenny Formby. Now, the Executive Committee of Unite, for those of you not in that union like I am, never passes anything that Len McCluskey doesn't support. So we have to understand the depth of support for Chris Williamson's suspension. That's the first thing to understand. I also want to talk a little bit about Momentum, which I sent to Graham and Jackie a while back. I went to on a Palestinian delegation with the Labour movement last summer. John Landsman and, for that matter, Molly Landsman were part of the delegation. Afterwards, we had a WhatsApp discussion, as you would imagine, about all things Israel, Palestine, and so on. And I challenged him on why he wasn't standing up. And he said back, and I sent this to Graham, Jackie Walker is an anti-Semite and leads the anti-Semites of this country. From John Landsman. He went on to say, Mark Wadsworth is not an anti-Semite, but he deliberately disrupted the Chakrabarti report and therefore should be suspended. And finally, Pete Wilson is not in this category, but he has behaved disgracefully and I will no longer support him. So you see, this is last summer, before John Landsman has come out with even more. The organisation is broken. And my colleague here, Michael, moved at our latest Brent Momentum that we call for him to be removed as chair of Momentum. And that I think is a good way forward. There's one other small point I want to make, because Graham Bash is frequently quoted. I've heard him many times over my life, I'm afraid, and I've heard him say many times that John McDonnell is the finest Labour MP there's ever been. Let me just say about John McDonnell, he has fallen apart over this anti-Semitism witch hunt. He has been on the media again and again saying it's a disgrace, we're going to wipe it out. He has let his left-wing comrades down. He hasn't lifted a finger to back anybody, Jackie Walker or anyone else, and we haven't got the leadership we yet need of our Labour Party. Comrades, fight on.
Is it working? Yeah. I just wanted to say that as someone said just now, Gaza is under attack today.
You can come to the middle of the aisle, please.
We won't hear much about that on the BBC or in the Guardian or anywhere like that, but it's huge. There are massive numbers of tanks moving in earlier today. This is going to be the biggest thing since Protective Edge in summer 14, and it's going to be presumably horrendous all over again, and we'll only hear about it on social media. So all those of us, and I'm one of them, who are suspended, and it's hell, it's awful, it's humiliating, it's shaming, it's all dreadful, but nothing that any of us are going to go through is going to compare to what women and children in Palestine are going through now, and God knows how long it will go on. And it's about the Israeli election, and it's about, you know, Shaked and her fascism, and Netanyahu and Gantz and everyone, and it's all vile, and it may come to us one day, but at the moment we're not going to be hauled out of our homes or lose our homes or be raped or beaten or put in prison or, please God, you know, but they are, and it's hideous. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I went to see a play last week. It's just opened. It's coming from the Globe Theatre into the West End. It's called Emilia. It's really interesting. It's a very feminist piece. It's about Emilia Bassano, they think might have been the Dark Lady of the Sonnets. And it's performed entirely by women, and they play the men as well. It's really interesting. I wasn't convinced till the second act, but then it really gets good. Right at the end, the older Emilia, who is played by a black actress, they're all different colours. And right at the end, one of the women in her circle is burned as a witch. And she says, please don't burn me, I've got children, please don't burn me. And they burn her and the flames come. And then Emilia stands and says to the audience, they're going to burn us all, you know, but what we've got to do, I wish I'd written it down, more or less, I'm going to say it again and write it down, is blaze so bright that we set fire to their house, and we're all going to burn their fucking houses down. And the whole audience, which is all ages and all types of people, a lot of young, a lot of school kids, the whole audience got to their feet. It was so passionate. Everyone cheered and whooped and clapped, and we've got to feed into that feeling, because it's out there, and we're going to burn the fucking house down.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we have to remember that this is about power and this is about oppression. And yes, it's about silencing our ability to defend those who are oppressed. The Palestinians, the poor, the blacks, the Muslims, they know that it's the left who do that. And so it's not by accident that they attack the left with what they know is the Achilles heel of the left, which is accusations of racism. It's about the worst thing that you can do is call an anti-racist a racist. The worst thing, I remember when it first happened to me and I heard it on the radio, it made me feel sick to my stomach. And it took me quite a long time before it didn't make me actually sick to my stomach to be called an obnoxious racist. And in terms of the racist attacks, that actually this witch hunt is in itself racist, can I just say, if you want to know how racist it is, ask Jewish Voice for Labour. How many Jews have had death threats? How many of our meetings have had bomb threats? How many people have been physically attacked? How many of us have been suspended? If you want to talk about anti-Semitism, talk about the anti-Semitism of pro-Corbyn Jews, the anti-Semitism of anti-Zionist Jews, and they won't talk about that. Nobody reports about that because this isn't about racism. This is about power. And this is power red in tooth and claw. As to crowdfunding, yeah, it'd be great. And I might well need a lot of, I need to take the Labour Party to court £150,000. That's what you need.
2 days.
Set it up for me and collect it. Wonderful. Do it. Can I also say, in terms of the point that was brought up about the gagging power, and I'll call it that, of the structures of our labour movement, which includes the trades unions. I have been told that CLPs have been told, and trade union branches have been told not to give rooms to the showings of the witch hunt. Now, I want you to think about that. These are the people, they are supposed to represent our interests. How dare they tell union members what they can and cannot watch? How dare they tell CLPs what they can and cannot watch? And that tells you something about the rottenness that is at the heart of our movement. And that, of course, is what Corbyn was there to change. And this is why we're being attacked.
Comrades, when I spoke before, I said that we needed an authentic movement at the base of the dispossessed. And the problem we now have is that that which was created 3.5 years ago is not fit for purpose. Now, that does not mean that we reject every momentum group, because a lot of them are still very healthy. But what it does mean is that whether we do it or others do it, there is already a coming together of opposition to the way that momentum has been incorporated. And unless we are part of that, which I hope we will be, then we will not succeed. A Corbyn government will face, as I said, every obstacle from the state, from the capitalist class, from the media, and above all from their direct representatives in the Parliamentary Labour Party, who are actually, in my opinion, the single greatest force that will come between Corbyn and an election victory. So the task is ours. And I've known Graham Durham for almost as long as I've known Ken Livingstone, and I must say it's always been a pleasure, Graham. But I think that we have to look at this in a different way. I am not going to publicly attack John McDonnell from this platform. What I am going to do is come out with politics that on a number of questions are totally independent from what he has been saying and separate, so that we can build an independent movement. And unless we do that, then, as I said before, the Corbyns and the McDonnells and the few people with them in the Parliamentary Labour Party who are looking for an alternative will be left as prisoners of the right. I don't want just to have a political argument with McDonnell and say, I'm right, you're wrong. Easily done. We can point to what is the mistakes, in my opinion, he's made in conceding to this anti-Semitism witch hunt. But that isn't the point. We actually now have to independently chart a course that builds a movement that, in Eliane's words, creates a blaze, so that our prisoners in the right wing have actually got an alternative. And that's what I think we have to do. It isn't going to be easy. I actually think we're at a critical point, and unless we actually begin to build a rank and file movement to save the Labour Party, then I fear for what is going to follow. So that's the way I approach it, and I think that that is the correct way for us to work with people who are looking towards the Labour leadership, who have by no means given up on it. And for us just to denounce them will mean that we separate ourselves from the movement that must be created.
Silencing us then.
Comrade with stick.
Your free speech will be welcome, but you won't hear us.
Let me speak.
Completely blind. Total censorship.
Comrades, my name is Andrew Reiser. I'd like to talk about. Right. I'd like to talk about where we go from here. All sorts of things have been suggested, but I think the most important one is the root of this witch hunt. And the root of this witch hunt needs major surgery, not suspension, but expulsion of Tony Blair. The rest of the riffraff will follow, and the Labour Party will be that much healthier, and it will gain about an extra 50% in votes and another 100% in membership. And I will, for once, be first in line to join the Labour Party. I've never been in it, but I hope I will be able to. But with Tony Blair in it, sorry, the working class can't take this organisation seriously if we have still tolerating a mass murderer of that size. Thank you.
Hello everybody, Albert from Westminster North Labour Party. I just want to make a brief point, slightly critical, because my hero was Ken Livingstone. I grew up in the 80s, and he was significantly a fighter in terms of what I call race and class. To see literally 30 years on, somebody who proudly defended the black community to be tainted as anti-Semitic, I find it hard. But then I don't find it hard. The reason I don't find it hard is if you have very little understanding of race and class, you cannot challenge your enemy. We've reduced ourselves to identity politics. When you do that, the charge of anti-Semitism can be thrown at you every single day. And I'm going to say it, that is the failure of JC and JM. I don't care what anybody else have to say. If you can't defend your record in 40 years in public with a class analysis, you will let yourself be stained for life. And you need to defend it. No general can lead anybody if you're not going on the battlefield. It's a simple point. You need to articulate it from a race and class perspective. If you fail to do that, you're not changing any economics. You're held prisoner. You haven't got anybody in your CLP or whatever you call it who can articulate anything of substance. Angela Rayner will deny Norman Finkelstein. Richard Burden will go, yes, we have it in the Labour. You've got institutionalised racism. That's what impacts on the Labour Party's inability to articulate a race and class policy. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you have kept me silent since I had my hand up at the beginning. Well, patience. It's nothing to do with patience. It's to do with not being heard and having to protest. First of all, I would like to know. First, quick question is, why are you all in this Labour Party? It's just a monstrous thing. It's not going to take you anywhere. It's completely a bourgeois party. It's not calling for revolution. It's not explaining what's going on in the world. It isn't saying anything, and dragging the working class into it is total treachery. It should be a revolutionary movement that's being built. That's the first point. Second point is, I haven't heard anyone here talk about the existence of this so-called Israel, which is actually a theft of the land of the Palestinian people. It was taken from them by force, violence, ethnic cleansing, terrorism and everything else in 1948 and onwards, and has been maintained that way ever since, and you've got going on again today in Gaza, as we've just heard. Until this so-called Israel is ended, and until every Palestinian gets every scrap of their land back, every house, every square metre of their farms, every well, every shop, every house that they ever had, you cannot have any kind of solution there. So we need to be talking about the existence of this so-called Israel. And anybody who is not for that policy and who supports the existence of Israel is de facto a Zionist. Whether they're a liberal Zionist, whether they say they're against Netanyahu or not, it doesn't matter. If you're supporting the existence of Israel, you are part of the problem. And that is the issue that isn't talked about. Nobody talks about the existence of Israel, which incidentally was created by the Labour Party, a left Labour Party under Attlee in 1948. At the same time that they were bombing Greece, the same time they were bombing the communists in Malaysia, the same time they were running the rest of the empire, torturing people in Kenya and everywhere else. Why are you supporting this Labour Party? It's a bourgeois party, it's part of capitalism, and you really need to be talking about bringing down this capitalist system, which means revolution. And that's why you didn't want to hear me speak.
Yeah. Can I just start by saying, Jackie, Graham, 100% solidarity. Love and solidarity, strength and solidarity. I wanted to say this, yeah. I think Jackie's like a lightning conductor for the heart of this problem, right? Because from when Tony Blair, as your man there rightly says, it's like we need an exorcism in the party, because since the day Tony Blair came into the party and transformed it into a party that was fine with privatisation, scrapped Clause 4, everything that resembled socialism. We weren't even allowed to say it, if you remember. They had pages out banning such words as socialism. And with that, Labour's 50, 100-year cuddle with Zionism became a passionate embrace of Zionism. And Labour Friends of Israel flourished like a big flower in the Labour Party. And ever since then, anybody who tries to make a criticism of the evil policies of the Israeli state is branded an anti-Semite. So if we're going to get to the heart of this matter, we can't keep running away from that. The brother's right, a race and class analysis, not an identity politics analysis, is going to get us there. And we need to stop being scared of speaking out. We need to challenge the heart of this problem and recognise that Jackie Walker is doing a service to socialism, not just in Britain, but throughout the world, Jackie, because this is a worldwide problem. And God bless you, mate, for taking it on head on. Jackie, keep it up, man. See you tomorrow, Jackie. See you tomorrow, Jackie.
Tony Greatrex, pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionist. I only have one question for Jackie. Can I have permission to give you a hug before I leave?
Comrades, a lot of you people are from London. Obviously I'm from the West Midlands, as my accent probably betrays. Well, yeah. Is that okay? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So being from the West Midlands, I'm kind of in the belly of the beast, because my MP is John Speller. Yeah. Next door to me is Ian Austin. I've got Ruth Smith, just a few miles away. Got Jess Phillips, of course. And I've got Tom Watson, next door to me. And the reason I say this is because, I mean, they've had a couple of goes at suspending me for anti-Semitism, because I'm a, quite a prominent activist in the West Midlands, and there's a guy who's a Labour Friends of Israel guy in my own branch who went on my Facebook page and copied a meme and he's done everything he can to get me suspended, but I've got a few friends, so far I'm still standing. But just about Watson, because I think it's very relevant to where we are, Tom Watson, because at the moment I'm very close to Chris Williamson. I'll say more about Chris in a minute. But Tom Watson at the moment's on the rampage, and I think at the moment the big project for these people is to try and take Jenny Formby out. That's actually the immediate target, yeah? Because if they can take Jenny out, they can get to Jeremy, because Jenny Formby is actually fantastically powerful. She's actually too powerful. I think the General Secretary's got too much power, but she's very powerful. And if you don't know her, she's actually a very formidable figure, and she's a comrade. Although she's compromised because of her job, she often does things that you probably wouldn't necessarily want to do. But she's absolutely our friend, and she's. And you probably heard the news today about breast cancer being diagnosed, which is very, very upsetting, and I'm very concerned about that, because she's the General Secretary, but a lot of the machine is still controlled by the right. So I hope she's got people there who are going to, continue the work she's been trying to do to improve the situation in the party. I'm not too naive. It's not where it should be, but she's been working to try and improve the situation. So her health problem is a concern for me, and it should be a concern for all of us, I think. And you have to think about the pressure she's been under and the kind of stuff that Watson has been doing, because these are the kind of things that do actually make you ill. And I actually think that mind and body and all that, and you put that kind of stress on, it makes you think about why, she's got this situation at the moment. Just about Chris, because I'm into Chris. I was with Chris yesterday. I do a lot of things actually, but one of my projects is within CLPD. I'm very active in the campaign for Labour Party Democracy. Very good friend of Pete Wilsman's. And we're forming regional groups, and I was in Liverpool yesterday, and I asked Chris to come along, Chris William to come along, just to be there and to feel the solidarity from the grassroots. We didn't invite him to speak because that's potentially going to get him into trouble or us into trouble, but he came to the meeting, he did speak, and you just could feel, as soon as he walked in the room, there was a massive, everybody stood up and applauded, and there's deep, he, more than any other comrade, and absolutely no slight on Jackie, he has fantastic support throughout the party, because he's very high profile, everybody knows him, he goes around, and so there's massive anger at what they've done to Chris, and it's been a real problem to decide exactly how to play this, because I saw him the day he was actually suspended, because he was coming to a union meeting in Warsaw, and he was going to speak, and he said to me, "Shall I speak?" I said, "Yes, it's a union meeting, it's safe." And he hadn't eaten. He was visibly shaken by what happened to him, and he was telling me, he spoke to him recently, he doesn't go to the House of Commons anymore, because whenever he goes there, he gets baited constantly, he gets abused, and he's just waiting for another stunt, like a John Mann type stunt, to be done. So he's actually stopped going to the House of Commons as an MP, and because we know him as a militant, we know him as a fighter, and at the moment he really doesn't quite know what to do. I'm actually going to Derby on Wednesday to his constituency office. There's 3 or 4 of us, and what I've said to him is, what we can't be doing, which is what we've done along, is just to be reacting to their shit all the time. We actually need to strategise. We need our own plan to fight back. We need to take them on, whether it's getting Blair out of the party, whether it's dealing with Watson, because we've got a lot of shit on Watson, we've got to actually push back. We can't always be on defensive, because as Jackie said, every time we take one step back, they take a step forward, and we've been on the retreat the whole time, and that has to change. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, all right, sorry. Okay, my name is Pam Blakelock. I'm from Dulwich and West Norwood CLP. In our Momentum branch a couple of weeks ago, we were split 6-6 over whether to move a motion to support Chris Williamson. So what happened was that the left then organised across 3 constituencies to unite the left in order to defend Chris and take this up. So that's Dulwich, Peckham, Camberwell and Britain, Bermondsey and Old Southwark. So we now have a network of Momentum members. And on the question of tactics on Momentum, I agree with, I think, what Graham said, that we shouldn't just walk out. We should really try and use strategy in order to break the majority of Momentum members away from the Landsman leadership. And also, at the same time, think about an independent position as well, if we can't do that. What I mainly want to say, though, is I think continuing what Graham is saying, that we need to realise how important we are in world international terms. Everyone is looking at Corbyn on the left throughout the whole world. Social democracy has been going down. The whole left movement since Stalinism, the Communist Party, the Communist movement is in disarray. There isn't one country really where, you know, we can say we have international socialism. And in answer to this comrade here, why are we in the Labour Party? It's a very good question. But I've never seen a movement in response to the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn like we have here. It's significant, and whatever we know, the Labour Party is split between pro-imperialism and anti-imperialism, and that's how it was formed. And what we do is crucial, not just for us. So we've got to get out there and recruit and build and yell and shout and do everything, and pay tribute to Jackie and all those who are being persecuted by the right. Otherwise we will have Blair back, we will have a war party back. What they did in Iraq will be continuing, you know, as if it isn't under Trump anyway. And we have to fight this anti-Semitism thing and show how Trump and Israel are both courting the right-wing fascists to show that it's nothing to do with anti-Semitism and everything to do with the whole imperialist reliance, especially United States imperialist reliance on Israel as their bastion in the Middle East. And the whole development of events since Afghanistan, Iraq, etc., has destabilised the whole world. We are at the forefront of fighting this.
Hello, my name is Mark Lewis. Just a few very quick points. I think the discussion has been very interesting and a very inspiring meeting. Just on this question of criticism of McDonnell and criticism of Corbyn, which Graham has mentioned. Clearly, we don't want to slip over into what Graham described as denunciation of these people. They are comrades, and very much in the spirit of what Jackie was talking about. We can be critical of our comrades. You know, we can be. You know, a friend, you know, can tell you, if you keep moving in that direction, you're going to fall off a cliff. All right? It's not an act of solidarity to say, no, carry on. You know, we'll keep quiet about that. If this doesn't turn around, if this doesn't change in terms of the methodology that these leaders of our party, people who we respect, who have done wonderful things. If it doesn't turn around, we will lose and lose badly. We will lose any type of Labour Party potentially in this country. I want to be optimistic. I want to say that we still have huge opportunities in terms of changing the Labour Party. The fact that our politics have resonated so much with people that it was just all was required was a small breach in the edifice of Blairism, and in came tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, our people. All right? So we should have tremendous confidence that if we organise ourselves, if we maintain a comradely but independent attitude to politics and to the way we're going to fight in the party, we can win. Now I want to say lastly, very quickly, something about what winning will look like. Again, very usefully, I think, Jackie raised this question of loyalty. And I knocked on doors for a whole range of a pack of bastards, all right, in the Labour Party, all right? You know, people with the morality of shithouse rats. They show no loyalty to us. Nothing to us. No loyalty to the working class. No loyalty to socialist principles. No loyalty, as evidenced by what they have done now, to human decency in terms of their approach to us. Okay? So, again, to be critical of one of our fine leaders in the past, Tony Benn, when he said, well, the Labour Party needs 2 wings to fly. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Again, taking on what Jackie says about people changing, good. I hope the people, the majority of the parliamentary Labour Party changes and, sees the socialist light and comes over to the side of happiness and principle. But these people actually, all right, are not just a pain in the arse in the Labour Party. They are not a legitimate political ideological trend in any healthy workers' movement. All right? And unless they change, we should actually say, get out of our movement, because you soil it. You soil it. That's it. That's about as diplomatic as I get. So,
Okay, comrades. Before we bring in Graham and then Jackie to sum up the meeting, may I remind you that we've had about £1,500 worth of expenses putting on this meeting as Labour Against the Witch Hunt. So we'd appreciate if you could put in a donation box with Stan, who's standing at the door at the back. He will hassle you on your way out. It's been a fantastic meeting. I think it's been a very first discussion of where we're going and how we can organise to bring this witch hunt to an end and to organise the Labour left, which I think are both extremely important. So I'll bring in back Graham first and then Jackie.
Well, just very briefly, 3 subjects: the Labour Party, Israel and Jackie. On the Labour Party, come off it. For those of us who have been struggling against Blair in a minority of 1, being beaten week after week, year after year, to say now, with a party under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, with hundreds of thousands coming in, building one of the strongest parties in Western Europe, that's just the time to leave, isn't it, comrade? For God's sake, our task is to build a movement to keep our leaders on the right road. So that's the first thing. Secondly, Israel. Now, let me make it, I said before, when I was 19, I became a socialist internationalist. What does it mean when you look at Israel? It means this, that I deny the legitimacy of a state in which I, as a British Jew, have a greater right to live than a dispossessed, ethnically cleansed Palestinian. So what does that mean? It means quite simply that our task is to put forward a position that Israel, like any other state should be a state of its citizens. Now that, sorry comrades, that is actually the correct formulation in my opinion, and if that is in breach of the IHRA to say that Israel is a racist endeavour, and I do say that, then so be it. And I do agree, we can have all the tactical nous in the world, but unless we are prepared to speak the truth to our own side, then we will get nowhere. We must always be honest to the people that we represent, which is the best part of the Labour movement. And if that means saying that about Israel, then so be it. Finally, Jackie is facing her trial tomorrow, and I know that nothing would give her greater strength than to see as many as possible of you there. And I hope the full details will be given. And we want all of us, I'm sure, to give solidarity to you and to all of those who are facing suspension and expulsion from our party. Thank you.
There's something delightful on the eve of my hearing to just even think about Tony Blair being expelled from the Labour Party. I don't know if any of you heard, but I've heard him speaking, and I've thought, how come this man is not suspended for bringing the party into disrepute? And as well as Tony Blair, you could add a whole host of other MPs and others. But I did like, and if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. There was a lovely goggle box the other day. And it shows the gap between the chatterati journalist class and actual real people. Because Tony Blair, I think he was on the Daily Politics show, and he was giving it all that, all that. And I really think we need to really think the way we're going, and we really need to think about democracy. And there's 1 million people who've been marching, and nobody reminded him about the 1 million people who marched against him with Iraq. But he was giving it all of that. And one family after another just derided this man and said, who is this person? Who is this person? And why do The Guardian and the BBC and the ITV and the Mail and whatever they are, why does this man have a voice on Radio 4 when I have to turn my radio on? I'm going to end my comments with something, and I know that the comrade who actually started this conversation has now gone. And it was this talk about race and class. Have you gone, or are you there still? You're there! Whoa! Because you have it in a nutshell. When you have race being something where somebody is upset, oh, I'm upset. I'm really upset. And Gary Young wrote an article. It was a tentative article about last week. And what he was saying, basically, is we need to remember that the politics of race is the politics of power. And that's where it links to class. And the neoliberals want us to talk about people being upset. They don't want us to talk about the way that blacks and Muslims are excluded at all levels of the Labour Party. They don't want us to talk about the fact that last year saw the fewest black and minority ethnic candidates selected for Labour winnable seats ever. They don't want us to talk about the marginalisation and the lack of representation that black and Muslim members have. That's what they don't want to talk about. Now, is the Labour Party institutionally racist? I find that extraordinary. And people were saying the Labour Party is structurally anti-Semitic. I think people need to go back and read Macpherson and understand what structural racism means. Because for it to be structurally racist, it would mean that Jews would have to be excluded from power at all levels, or at any levels. And thank goodness Jews aren't. They are no longer talked about in Parliament as vermin, which is how they were talked about in the 19th century. Thank goodness those times have changed. Thank goodness we have a minority that has managed to progress and actually maintain their position in that way. Thank goodness. But let us not forget that what has happened during this witch hunt is the people who've been attacked, I believe, have been disproportionately black and Muslim. And will I be silenced? Well, you know, there's another rewrite of the play going on. And there's going to be a book. Of course, there has to be a book. Not the kind of, you know, at 6:15 I met with the vice chair of my Labour Party and did that. No, it's going to be a book. It's going to be a piece about what it has been like to be on this extraordinary ride, which has taken me extraordinary places, where my level of awareness has been raised in ways I can't even begin to tell you, where I've met the dearest, best of people, and I have seen the dregs of our movement, and I've seen too often those dregs be promoted because of their willingness to stay silent in the face of injustice. So that's it, guys. I feel like the Bugs Bunny cartoon. That's it, guys. Can I just say, hugs are welcome. And solidarity, everybody.
Comrades, please come tomorrow to the hearing if you can. Ask us about the details. We will tell you the venue. Join Labour Against the Witch Hunt, please. There's forms outside if you haven't joined yet. And please give a donation if you can. As I said, it was a very expensive meeting. There's also a lefty merchandise stall, and you can buy these wonderful badges here and more. We have to be out of the room in about 10 minutes. So if you could sort of slowly make your way this way. Thank you. Well done. Great job. Yeah, sorry. I don't know what you were saying. Oh, it was good. Excellent. Well done.
We are going to succeed, and you are going to be Reinstate, and please Williamson, supporting people that they need to die. Because you are our pillars, the pillars of the Labour Party, and the people need
Was that a yes?
Oh, I don't know.
What happened on the email like that? I didn't notice it.